The Mumblings of a Mortician, a tale of intrigue, death, and terrorism. Join me in this next episode to find out more. Roll those credits. Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel, An English Undertaking, and in this episode we're going to be looking at this book and this man. His name is Peter Stefan. He's a funeral director in the United States of America, in Michigan, I believe. I think it's Massachusetts. I'll let you know. But he's written this really great book. It's called Mumblings of a Mortician, and it is out now on Amazon to buy. So if you haven't got a copy, go and get a copy because it's really great. But first, I expect you want to hear a review. So first of all, who is Peter Stefan? Well, Peter Stefan is a first generation funeral director or mortician, undertaker, whatever you want to call him, same job, in the USA. He runs the funeral home, the Graham, Putnam and Mahoney funeral parlours in Worcester, Massachusetts, and there is a picture of there. You may have already seen pictures of it on the internet. Peter became quite notorious a few years ago when he laid to rest the Boston Marathon bomber, Tamerlan Tsarnaev. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not too sure, but I think you know who I mean. So he came under a lot of intense scrutiny over doing that. But the really unique thing about Peter Stefan is that his reputation goes before him. And his reputation is that nobody, excuse the pun, should be left unburied. No one deserves to go to the grave without proper kind of ceremony, which is something that I personally, believe in, is something that I hold dear, because I do think that every person is kind of sacred in a way, and we all get treated the same in death. It doesn't matter what you've done in life. The process of being buried, cremated or whatever, it happens to us all. So Peter kind of very much believes in that ethos and lives by that, and that is very, very evident in this book. And if you've ever Googled him, you'll know, through the interviews that he has done, that comes across quite strongly. So just to confirm, Peter Stefan is from Boston, Massachusetts, and he runs his funeral home in the Worcester area of that particular state. So, Worcester as in Worcester in America, not Worcester as in Worcester here in England. Very, very different. Sounds the same, totally different. So the funeral profession is actually his second career. He started life out as a musician, as actually a saxophonist in a jazz band, and that is him in his day as a musician, or that's him holding a saxophone anyway. And that was his kind of passion, really, was music. But obviously, like a lot of musicians that aren't professional or famous in any way, he had to hold down a day job to support his family. That day job was as a mortician, and he went to mortuary school in the United States. He qualified as a funeral director. I think he qualified as an embalmer as well. I'm not too sure. But he graduated mortuary school anyway and went to work at the Graham, Putnam, Mahoney funeral parlours in his hometown. And in the 1970s, he had the opportunity to actually buy the funeral homes. There was, I think, 3 altogether that he bought, but he sold 2 and concentrated on just the one in Worcester, where he lives and works. So he's the first generation funeral director. This business was not given to him. He had to work for it, he had to buy it, and it's become his pride and joy and his life's work. As I said previously, the unique thing about Peter Stefan, what sets him apart from a lot of other funeral directors, is that he never turns work away. And that's not because he's some kind of money-hungry, greedy, fat cat capitalist. I think it's because he's a genuine, decent and kindly man who, believes in the fact that, he is a funeral director. His job is to lay people to rest. He doesn't question why those people have ended up in his care. Because obviously people die in different circumstances. Some of them get to the funeral home a lot quicker than others, as we all know. He never really questions that. He never looks at the person's life before death and judges them. He just kind of deals with the situation as he has it right there and then, and he gives everybody kind of the same treatment, whether you're the guy down the street or an infamous terrorist who just murdered a load of people. It's the same treatment. And again, he's got this reputation of helping those on the margins of society. So those like, international terrorists who no funeral home wanted to actually deal with the Boston bomber. Every funeral home, cemetery, crematorium just turned them away and just said, no, we're not doing it, we're not doing it, we're not doing it. It was only because a lady had heard of Peter and heard about his reputation that she contacted him, and he was able to lay the Boston bomber to rest in a dignified manner. And he come under a lot of scrutiny for it. He got death threats. His staff were threatened. His funeral home was bombarded with protesters. It must have been absolutely horrendous. And if when you look at Peter Stefan, he's a little old man, and I don't mean that in a patronising way, but he's an elderly gentleman, who could probably do without that at his time of life. But I don't know, he's probably, he definitely is a lot tougher than we give him credit for. So his reputation for helping those on the margins of society stretched to those who are poor. He helps a lot of the poor people in his community. That is what we call funeral poverty nowadays. Unfortunately, funerals are an expensive thing to go through, and a lot of people don't have that type of cash just lying around, especially when a death has occurred that is unexpected. It's all of a sudden you've got the horrendous grief that you're experiencing because somebody has died completely suddenly, coupled with, a potentially large financial commitment. So, and that's where Peter kind of steps in and says, well, I will help you. And that's what he does. And, he's penned it all beautifully in this fantastic book. It's called Mumblings of a Mortician, and the subtitle is World-Renowned Funeral Director Peter Stefan Unravels Pieces of His Mind. And it is, how many pages? It's actually 184 pages, but the text only goes up to 171. The last few pages are of pictures of awards and accolades Peter has received over the years for his work as a funeral director. And that is a picture of him today. So you see, he's not a big, burly, strapping young fella who could take on, protesters baying for his blood, for simply just basically doing his job. That's all he was doing. He was doing his job as an undertaker. He was laying the dead to rest. So, he got a lot of grief for it. But this book, it's a real page turner. I read this in 3 days. Started it on Monday. By Wednesday, I'd finished it. It was absolutely fantastic. The chapters are really short. So, even though it's a fairly thickish book, the chapters are relatively short, so you can get through it quite quickly. And like I said, it is a real page turner. There are some chapters in here that when you're reading them, you're thinking, did he really say that? Did that really happen? Or is he just doing it for comedy effect? And I'll give you an example. He talks about his colleagues, the people that he employs and the people that he works with, and he has little pet names for them, like nicknames, we call them. The chapter is called Staff Infections, and there's one thing here. Oh, where is it? He's talking about a lady who he shares an office with, which, as the chapter goes on, you're kind of reading it and you're thinking, my God, if people said that really in like the UK, he'd probably be fired. He really would. There we go. So the little chapter is called Target Practice, and he starts with saying another co-worker, and obviously he doesn't name the co-workers. Excuse me. He gives them all little nicknames. He calls this co-worker Bullseye because basically he takes pot shots at her because she's obviously quite a well-built lady. Another co-worker, Bullseye, has incredible tolerance as I fling relentless jabs at her appearance and weight issues month after month, year after year. So straight away, you know that this is going to potentially make for uncomfortable reading. And you read through. I won't tell you what it says because I don't want to spoil it, but you can kind of guess. And I just think over here, the way things are here in the UK, I don't think he would get away with it. And I did kind of question myself, thinking, has this been put in just for effect, or is this true or not? I don't know. I can only assume it's true. I can only assume that the lady's still working for him because he hasn't been sued yet that we know of. But yeah, it's quite funny in those respects. There's also chapters about, because it's not all about him in the funeral business, it's just his life in general and just encounters that he has with like everyday people, like waitresses in restaurants, people in the street, people down at the local shops, so there's all kind of interactions that he goes into detail with, but the majority of it is of with relation to the funeral profession. He also does go into detail about the Boston Marathon bomber and everything that entailed that kind of chapter of his life, and that's probably the longest chapter in the book. That is something that you would probably class as a proper chapter, if you like, because it is a few pages long and goes into quite some detail, and it's quite interesting as to what he actually went through from start to finish with regards to the Boston Marathon bomber. The book itself is quite nicely illustrated. There's no kind of pictures of coffins or I say that. That's a picture I've just turned to. Casket in the back of a hearse with some flowers on. But there's no real kind of shocking photos in here. There's no kind of real funeral home death related images. A lot of them are generic kind of images that you would probably find anywhere, on the internet. Really, look like a picture of a cat. So they're the type of things that the book is illustrated with of a bat. That particular chapter is talking about basically the strange callers that he has at the funeral home. Some people to just turn up with the most bizarre things racing through their minds. And he kind of just takes it all in his stride. He's obviously got quite a dry sense of humour. And again, how much in the book is written for entertainment purposes and how much is genuine, you don't really know. But reading through it, he's obviously got quite a dry sense of humour. He can be comes across as quite abrupt and to the point, which... for a funeral director is probably not the best thing in the world, but it's not the worst either. But if you take away all of that, I think what you're left with is a man who's dedicated his entire life to a noble profession that is very much overlooked and underrated and gets quite a lot of bad press. Unjustifiably, in my opinion. And he's just one man trying to do his absolute best in a world that is absolutely turned on its head at the moment. Like I say, his sincerity is genuine. His kindness. There's a genuine love and a passion on his part for the people he looks after and the profession that he serves, and there's no doubt in that. There's a very good description. The picture of him again. Another description of him just in the front of the book. Which, is absolutely fantastic. I'll just read you this is the foreword to the book. So this book, although it's all Peter's own stories, it's actually the two authors are Frank Quaglia and Art Sesnovich. So they're the two authors. And there's a picture of those two in the back of the book. But this is what somebody has written about him. This was written by William S. Coleman III, American activist and public speaker. He says, Peter Stefan is a man who looks upon the world as an orchestra. Each person helped to create a beautiful symphony of sound and purpose. As a young musician growing up in Boston, Peter would play saxophone during the supper club era when people would go out to dine and dance and listen to good music. He learned to evaluate his musical peers by the quality of sounds they made with their instruments, not the colour of their skin or how much money they had. So, right off the bat there, that, he's a guy who appreciates people for who they are as people, and doesn't judge anybody by the wealth of the person or the colour of the person, which again is two big ticks in my book. He views all people through the same lens. What do they bring to the world, large or small, to make it a better place? Accordingly, Peter genuinely tries to establish a positive connection with everyone lucky enough to cross his path. As a funeral director, he provides comfort to families and dignified services for their loved ones. Sometimes he interacts with people who are grateful just to be alive, who cherish every moment. But more frequently, he meets desperate people who feel abandoned. He helps those unfortunate ones to find their way to receive basic needs like food, clothing, and warm shelter. Occasionally, doing what your heart tells you is right becomes controversial and pits you against a large segment of society. For instance, helping make funeral arrangements for one of the Boston Marathon bombers thrust Peter into the middle of a public outcry. Throughout, he followed his conscience. He dealt with threats and accusations while maintaining a calm self-assurance that has become his hallmark. Not surprisingly, Peter has collected a tremendous number of stories. Many are hilarious and uplifting, while some are strange, morbid, or sad. Yet they all reflect the many sides of an honest man who embodies the highest ideals of the human spirit. So there you have it. Mumblings of a Mortician by Peter Stefan, world-renowned funeral director in the United States of America. If you want to buy a copy of this book, you can do so on Amazon. It is available on Kindle as well. I would imagine, because I'm Facebook friends with Peter, if you contact him directly, I'm sure he will be happy enough to sign a copy, and you can buy it from his website, no doubt. I know he's been on Facebook over the last couple of weeks promoting the book, and a couple of people have kind of messaged him in the inbox and said, oh, can you sign a copy? And he's replied, in a positive manner. So yeah, that's just a couple of ways of getting your hands on the book. It's definitely well worth going out and buying a copy. I got mine, I think it was £9. That's UK money, GBP, English pounds, £9. And I ordered it from Amazon with Amazon Prime, so it was free delivery. So it's not a lot of money, but if you can get yourself a copy, do so, because it's well worth it. And if you want to speak to the man himself, you can find him on social media, mainly Facebook. In fact, only Facebook. So drop him a message. I'm sure he'd appreciate it. Google Peter Stefan as well, because there are streams and streams of interviews on the internet with him regarding not only the Boston bomber, but his life in general as a funeral director. And if you look on YouTube as well, you can see a couple of interviews he's done with news channels. And I think Caitlin Doughty, you know who I'm talking about, actually did a video, a Purpose Ask a Mortician video for her channel, all about Peter and his exploits. So until then, thank you very much until next time, thank you very much for tuning in. If you've liked this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Click on the bell notifications as well to be notified when the next video will be available. And if you want to check me out on social media, you can. I'm on all the usual places: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr. I think I'm on Pinterest as well. I think somewhere I may even have a Reddit post. LinkedIn as well. Not that I do much on LinkedIn, but the usual main popular sites you can find me on as well. All the links are sliding across your screen as you speak. And yeah, until next time, take care of yourself. I will leave a link to Amazon for this book here. It will be the UK link. So if you are watching this in the US or any other country, then just go onto your own country's Amazon page. But I'll put the link for the Amazon UK in the description below anyway, so you can go along and get yourself a copy of this fantastic book. Thanks very much, guys. See you in the next video. Bye-bye. Thanks very much for watching the video just now. That was recorded last Thursday on the 17th of March. It is now the 22nd. It is Tuesday, the 22nd of March. Very sadly, Peter Stefan died last night. It was announced on his Facebook page that he had died. He was in his 80s. We don't know how he passed away, but very sadly, Peter died last night, which was Monday, the 21st of March. So I just thought I would obviously update this video by just adding this segment, just to kind of make you aware of Peter's sad death. It'll be a great loss. Well, it is a great loss to the funeral profession as a whole, but obviously particularly in the United States, in Boston, in Massachusetts. Worcester was the area where he lived. It will be particularly felt there, as he did extensive work helping those on the margins of society and the poorer members of society, helping them through their grief and whatever problems he could ever help with. So it's a sad day for funeral professionals all over, really, who would have known Peter or known of his work. But thanks anyway. His Facebook page is still live at the moment, so I'm sure if you want to, you can send any messages of condolence there. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.